See this guy right here?
I was thinking it was like a sequel, but then later on, as we kept going, it started changing. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is the same thing over again.
He has never seen FullMetal Alchemist Brotherhood in his life. So every week, me, C-Tactics.
How do you regulate that? How do you make sure that doesn't get out of control?
And he, Satsuki the Savage.
I've already seen this series in full and read it, so.
Seasoned experts on everything FullMetal will be diving in with this newbie here to talk, discuss, joke around, and eventually finish FullMetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And seeing as this is a brand new series here and the first of its kind, we set up a challenge for you. Can you get this video to 10 likes and 3 new subscribers? Let's jump in.
Never finished it. I mean, I was confused because this was back when it originally came out. I was thinking it was like a sequel to FullMetal Alchemist, the original 2003 version. And then when I saw Brotherhood, it was different at the beginning. It absolutely was. But then later on, as we kept going, it started changing. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is the same thing over again. And then I got tired of it. I definitely see what you guys mean when you say like, the first episode feels like you had to have watched the original FullMetal Alchemist anime to watch this, because then it kind of like leans heavy on that.
Brotherhood definitely. I don't think it does it in the first episode, but there's definitely some moments where it's almost as if they expected you already to have watched the original FullMetal Alchemist, so they kind of speed through things because of that. It's specifically later with a certain character that they kind of gloss over in Brotherhood, but it was a whole episode in the original FullMetal Alchemist.
Yeah, and this episode, by the way, one of the most surprising things, this series came out in 2011, right?
I thought
2009.
Yeah, 2009.
2009.
Like late 2000s.
This show looks fantastic for its age.
Yeah.
Bones, man, they were on some shit back in this era because it truly was a spectacle of an episode. What was the bad guy's name in this episode?
Isaac Douglas.
I do love the character names in this show. They're always interesting and unique, but I like how he created the ice wall and it just plows through all of those buildings, killing dozens and dozens and hundreds of innocent people. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the scene from Declaration of War in Attack on Titan when Eren is in the basement with Reiner and he transforms into the Attack Titan and just ends up killing a building full of people and everyone in the crowd. Sort of reminded me of that a little bit.
He didn't kill anybody there. They were all watching Morbius.
There was a few people that got frozen and he pushed them over and they shattered.
He froze people. I like how he's talking to Kimberly, and Kimberly's a freaking psycho, man. Dude, he's crazy.
You're talking about the guy in jail?
Yeah, the guy in prison. Yeah, he's whack.
Which, by the way, voice of Trunks.
Yeah, this is like right after the golden age of Funimation.
Yep, I would say peak voice acting because everyone's perfect in their role, which I want to get off my chest really quick. Everyone is perfect in their role. Everyone is just like they fit the character so well, but I feel like, that there are characters where they were born to play them, and Vic Mignogna was born to play Edward Elric. When everything's all said and done for him, he will be remembered. Like, this will be his best character, in my opinion.
Well, I think Chris Sabat is Armstrong. I think a bunch of characters we haven't even got to yet are just... This was like Funimation at their pinnacle of casting. What I find so unfortunate, kind of makes me sad a little bit, is you hear online during this time that people were tired of these voice actors. And I go and I look back at this era of Funimation, when Funimation still existed, I guess. I feel like I could listen to these guys forever.
Same.
That group, they were so good, and they all had such distinct voices that I think today there's so many voice actors. Don't get me wrong, I think on average, all the dubs nowadays are either good to great.
I don't think there's a terrible one out there.
Yeah, it's hard to find bad dubs these days, but this cast is so great, and I feel like there's a little bit of a lacking of something in the new age of dubs compared to what we had back then. But that could just be me being biased because I grew up with these VAs.
I think that's what it is. I mean, everyone had their it's weird because it's like, I know they're voice actors, but it felt like each voice actor had their own unique kind of like way of talking that you could just, when you hear it, you can call it out and you go, oh, that's Vic Mignogna. Oh, that's Chris Sabat. Oh, that's Trunks. That's Krillin's voice actor.
And who else, EA?
Who else?
who else would be in this group of
Oh, no.
actors?
I already know what you're going to say. I'm sure Sean was in there somewhere, but I don't know who he was voicing.
Oh, you know he's like a background character making like some noise in the crowd.
Right. He's one of the officers that goes, "Stop right there."
Isaac is the central villain in this episode. He's very interesting when you look at the series in totality. He becomes more interesting as more and more things develop within the story. I've already seen this series in full and read it, so of course I won't say why that is. His whole purpose in this episode, in his perspective, he was the anti-hero. He is killing people for sure, but it's all for a just cause that nobody really cares about. Nobody gives a fuck. I think Edward literally said when he was talking about why he was doing what he was doing, he was like, "We need to take down Bradley. He started the Ishvalan War. Stand with me, my brother." And then Edward was like, "I don't care." It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, he was trying to convince him, and he's just like, "Look, I can transmogrify. I can transmutate without having to make a circle. I can just do it with my hand. Boom, you're dead."
World building wise, this episode was really good because with Isaac, he was a part of the anti-establishment movement, which is quite literally anti-government in every way, anti-federal anything. Basically, this group is kind of
Anarchists.
Yeah, it seems like they're anarchists that are playing on the Ishvalan conflict and are using that as a wedge to drive in between everything and I guess sow division and chaos in these institutions. It's really interesting when you look at it that way because you hear a lot of what these characters say. A lot of them, like Isaac and stuff, is like, yo, this government's horrible and all that. And then you see Bradley and they call him Führer. And it's just... And it's just like, it puts into your head like, it's like this crazy juxtaposition. It's like, are these the good guys or the bad guys? And you have Ed, he just does not care. He's basically a dog for the government. It all paints a really grand and detailed, vivid picture of, at least from like a general perspective, kind of the climate of the world at this point and the government and how the Ishvalan War has affected everything. And the government is still reeling from it. They're still recovering and trying to pick up the pieces in this aftermath of this insane, horrifying war, which we'll definitely learn about in the future. Oh, for sure. And I can't wait. You've seen the original FMA, right?
Yes, sir.
So you know a little bit about the world state at this point? Like, what do you remember?
Oh, man, it's been so long. But what I remember is that there was some war and Ishvalans were involved, and I think it had something to do with the government and something along those lines. I know who we haven't seen that character yet, but the one named Scar with the scar on his face is basically the
Scar's
leader.
great.
I don't really remember so much from it. I remember like bits and pieces. It's just been so long. I do know that when it comes to Alphonse, different VA than the original one. That's obvious because the original person was 12 when he did the voice actor role, which is, when you think about it, is impressive. Like Alphonse, the original one in 2003, he was 12 and he sounded really good. Yeah, this one, I forget who does the voice, but it's obviously a woman. But they couldn't obviously reprise his role. Yeah, that's right. J. Michael Tatum is fucking Scar.
He was a big, young, and upcomer during this era. Like, he was just cast in, like, Black Butler and Spice and Wolf.
Oh, my God. He made a lot of, no, I better not say, but a lot of ladies loved this man
God.
after Black Butler.
Well, I think going to what C was talking about with the world building and this first episode setting the stage for how everybody views this war, which seems to be the central conflict with a lot of motivations that we're seeing. Even with Ed, who had a standoffish attitude towards what Isaac was trying to do in this episode, that in of itself tells you something about his involvement in the war, which is he wasn't involved in it, so he doesn't really care too much about it. He's a young genius state alchemist who come up, so he wasn't involved in it the way Roy was, who Isaac cited him as a war buddy. First episode tells you how the public views State Alchemist because Maze has a scene where he's showing concern over Ed and Al because of their, connection to the military and how people view the military. This is in their home country. So the fact that people would look at them not as heroes, but as military dogs, that tells you that whatever went down in that war wasn't good.
Specifically with the military, some controversial decision was made, no doubt. Because, I mean,
Oh yeah.
think about most societies in our world today.
Right.
Most societies, or I'll say countries, that may be a better way to look at it. A lot of them take a lot of pride in their military. South Korea, as an example, it's like mandatory to be in the military. In America, you have support your troops and all that. And I think definitely to keep your eye on.
Sure. And we also see what we've already known. Edward and Alphonse, towards the end, committed the greatest sin. Alphonse lost his whole body, while Edward lost his arm, and pretty sure it was his leg, too.
No, so Ed lost his arm or his leg with the human transmutation.
Mm-hmm.
He lost the other limb trying to get Al's soul back.
Okay, that's what I thought. Interesting. It's a cool little twist too, because I think that's what I really liked about FullMetal Alchemist, is because you see this giant tank of an armor hulking looking being, and it's nothing's in there. It's just a soul. And the soul is that of his younger brother, who sounds just like this innocent.
Yeah, sweet.
The real FullMetal Alchemist.
Right. This innocent child, whereas he's very sweet and everything. He's like, oh well, I'm not the full Metal. You want to talk to my younger or my older brother who's shorter, and don't you call Edward a pipsqueak or short. He gonna lose his shit.
It reminded me of the thing that reminded me of that in the One Piece live action was when Buggy came out and they talked about his nose. Same dynamic. I love it when a character has that insecurity and gets up in arms about it. It's just so endearing. It's so funny. And I do love how everyone's like, Al is the FullMetal Alchemist. No way this shorty could be the FullMetal Alchemist. Come on now.
I mean, it makes sense.
It's in the name, FullMetal.
Right. And I think that's what's so good about it, is that it's such a detractor where you really think, oh, like the image, FullMetal Alchemist. It's that fucking guy. This big, brooding, all in armor. That's the FullMetal Alchemist. It makes sense. I would think that. But it's not. And I love that twist.
It's also could possibly be a unique advantage for him in the future, with opponents maybe over or underestimating him based on his stature. That belief that maybe, the big suit of armor is the FullMetal Alchemist. And maybe he'll use that to his advantage. Who knows?
Well, we have already seen their bodies being used as an advantage with this Isaac thing specifically.
Yes.
Because Isaac has... So, and I also find this pretty cool too, the power system with different alchemists having basically like a major, now they all can do kind of this, similar things. So on the base level, they're the same, but some people have their own specialty. And with Isaac, he has water alchemy. So we saw that he was able to touch people and basically boil their blood and just kill them with a touch. So he tried to use that on Ed and Al, and he ends up touching the arm of Al, which is all metal. And then, of course, Al doesn't have a body, so that didn't affect him.
Yeah, I liked that he could both freeze people and boil them, because it's just a liquid. And you could do both, freeze and boil it. And the fact he can use his own blood to kind of like shoot spears out of himself and like stick people, which very creative. Definitely the fighting's creative.
And one thing that I really like about the alchemy power system is that whenever they use their powers, they're never creating anything. They don't create water out of thin air. They don't create fire out of thin air. It's well, in his case, he always needed water around him to do any of the things that he was doing. Like when he escaped, he has the transmutation circle on his written on his palm. He fell over on a puddle and then used the puddle to, use his powers. So it's always this idea of you can't, it's like, Newton's law, like you can't create or destroy energy. You can only transform it. So that's what the power system is based on.
By the way, worst cops ever. They didn't stop to think, oh, there's a puddle there. La la la. Nope. Oh, I feel this guy falling. Steam, and then he just fucking escapes.
Yeah, I wonder how in the world how they kind of deal with that. Like, what if you're like, how do you act as a police officer in this government when you have consistently these whack jobs or just these out of control people with these insane alchemist powers? How do you regulate that? How do you make sure that doesn't get out of control? And like, what are the proper regulations for like a police officer to deal with something like that?
I mean,
don't fight them.
Probably, yeah.
There's that, but they also just had the guy in the cell where his hands were bound, and if he was to like touch hands or like do anything, he probably could have escaped. But I don't know. I would think he would need some sort of cuffs, but again, he fell onto water, so I don't know. Maybe you sew their hands together. I have no idea how you would control that.
So, like at the very end, we saw two figures. Those I won't name because they didn't name them in this episode.
I know their names.
I may know their names, but they spoke about because Isaac fails, Bradley kills him, and that ends that. And we see two figures who talk about them giving him the Philosopher's Stone and how he's a disappointment. So there's some plan in the background. So this whole thing that he did wasn't only via his own will. It was willed by some other mysterious figures in the background. For whatever reason, we don't know. But they seemingly are able to just give normal humans Philosopher's Stones, which we saw how powerful that ended up being.
Did you notice something about those last few scenes? Is the entire episode had a very blue kind of color tone to it, but those scenes had a very a color tone reminiscent to the reddish wine color of the Philosopher's Stone. Wonder what that could mean.
I don't know,
but one of them had big boob.
Yeah,
and voiced by Laura Bailey before she became a fucking worldwide sensation.
Yeah, Laura Bailey has the hottest voice in voice acting.
God, I love Laura Bailey. She can literally do anything. It's crazy. Her range.
Yeah.
I mean, her range isn't like.
Somewhere else with that comment.
You're like, she could just spread them. I
was worried.
What? Wait. Why do you expect me to be the pervy one here?
No, I don't expect it. I know it's going to be there. I just know.
I'm going to pretend you didn't say anything, and move on. I think Laura Bailey has one of the best ranges in anime and video game voice acting to this day. She's great. It's not like she has a finite range. Don't get me wrong. There are definitely people that can outdo her a little bit, but holy crap, she's like a once in a lifetime kind of talent, and it's crazy that she was in this series. It's interesting looking back on her career trajectory, going from starting in Dragon Ball and doing anime, and then is now just to some degree too big for anime.
Yeah,
like,
pretty much. If you need a woman in a video game to do a voiceover for, she's usually the one.
Laura Bailey and Troy Baker in this era were the two. They were the two, and a little bit of Nolan North. I think Nolan was a little bit into anime for a minute, but dude, just oh man, this cast is so good. Like, it kind of gives me goosebumps kind of talking about it because it is the perfect cast for an anime, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's one of those anime that's, dare I say it, the dub's better than the sub. I think it was like this era's Cowboy Bebop. I think Cowboy Bebop is obviously, that's a much more difficult series to voice act for, but I think if you every 10 years you get some really amazing dub, and this was one of them. I think another one, ironically, is Fruits Basket. I think that one was a really great dub too, and that had Laura Bailey as well.
Reading a little bit of the chat, Danitas Media says, I remember the first time I watched the episode, I was shocked Edward almost tried to beat up the little girl for calling him a pipsqueak. I mean, his mom probably told him pick on someone your own size, and he decided to follow that
Yeah, it's
that ideal.
his fault for being a shorty. Should go hang out with Levi in the losers corner.
Oh
Oh
my
my
god!
Bunch of
God.
losers.
I thought it was really cool how Edward can manipulate metal on a molecular level.
Yeah,
That was pretty cool.
I think I agree with Satsuki in terms of the way they use the alchemist powers, the law of equivalent exchange, and how that allows for so much creativity. I love that stuff.
Is really cool because it's always like this cool detail whenever like they touch the ground and they use this a lot where they use the ground as like a platform. What you always notice is when they create like these big steps, the ground under them, they take from the ground to put to use as material. It's almost like some Fortnite type of thing, They never just create something out of thin air.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and that's why I think they had such a great concept for those first two PS2 games they did for Full Metal. I thought that was such a great concept for a video game, and I wish and I hope maybe in the future one day, if this series ever gets some sort of renaissance after the fact, we get another video game, because imagine with the technology we have now, what a Full Metal video game would look like with these powers.
That'd be crazy. Crazy. Just Edward just has a pickaxe and starts hitting wood and trees.
It's Minecraft. Hi, Steve.
Yeah, he just starts dancing. Do the orange justice.
I think that's about it. I think we talked about everything there is to talk about.
Well, we have the scenes with the family.
Oh,
Mafia family.
The maze scene.
Yeah, the Maze family. That was those characters are going to be. They seem way too nice for this world so far. Like so far, I think this episode kind of painted the picture of a world divided and a world going through a lot of turmoil and division and all that. And you have the Maze, who are this kind of anomaly almost, where they're extremely positive people and they're so helpful. And
Get back in the kitchen, dear.
and they just have such a chemistry with one another. They really do feel like a family, and I think they're probably one of the most notable anime families because everyone knows about them. They're so positive, they're so happy, and they kind of have that, I don't know, that positive dynamic. They bring a little bit of levity to the series. They're kind of like the Sasha Browse of FMA in many ways. I actually do have a question for you guys.
Gone too soon. Oh yeah.
In my Discord server, Billy brought up a question, or rather brought up something interesting. He said that because this first episode is anime original, that they should have made the first episode into a movie. What do you guys think about that?
No.
Yeah, it's no.
They did this episode like this with a purpose in mind. I read the manga, so with knowing like how the whole story developed, they did this episode with the purpose of kind of, I don't want to say it, but this episode just means a lot more once you're finished with the series. Isaac's ideals, how he reacts to things, even like his interaction with Kimberly, it means a lot. And I think it's good in a vacuum. I don't think a movie is the right thing, like a whole different plot, because this was supposed to be basically a hint towards things in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was perfect.
Didn't they make a couple of Full Metal Alchemist movies?
Yeah.
For the original series, yes.
Yeah, and they were basically just originals. They had nothing to do with the manga or anything, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
No. Okay.
I don't think I've ever seen those.
All right.
Nah.
Well, any final thoughts on the first episode?
Is nice. I think it definitely goes to show, because you brought it up earlier, C, where you said this is made in 2009. It still looks great. I always say, if an anime is made, they should go all out and spare no expense. Because if they know they got a good story and they know they got something that's going to be remembered for years, just do it. And look at FullMetal Alchemist. 15 years later, and it still looks fucking great. It's better than some shit that you would see now.
Yeah, the art direction for Brotherhood is just, even in the original FMA. Original FMA is in 4x3, and it still looks great.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's gonna be like this forever, I think. I think in the future, these two separate series, Brotherhood and FMA, are going to be remembered for a very long time and going to be celebrated for a very long time, for sure.
Sure.
Very good first episode to set the stage.
Whew, what a cool gaggle of guys that was. Next week, we'll be covering episode 2 of Brotherhood. If you want to catch us live talking about FullMetal Alchemist, just subscribe with all notifications on. We stream every Monday on this channel and talk about FullMetal Alchemist Brotherhood there before it ever hits subfeeds. Thanks for watching. See ya!